Oh man, Stevie the Guide here, back on the banks of the Guadalupe River in Kerrville, Texas. Thank God I'm back here. I'm sorry to all my three adoring fans out there in the world. Thank you very much, God, to be back in Kerrville. I love this town, and I had to go to Houston for a couple of days. When I was off the air both mornings, I have found that it is difficult to do this show, especially if I'm in someone else's house and I'm in a different environment and it's not really private. And I got every excuse in the world that I didn't show up on Monday and Tuesday. And I'm slipping, baby. I'm slipping, hanging on to this this commitment to turn this thing on and talk to whoever it is out there I'm talking to. It's a commitment, and it's difficult, and life will throw these curves at you, and if you're going to do it at the same time every day, at first, you got a lot of enthusiasm. You know how it is, like, in New Year's when you join the gym and you're all charged up, like, yeah, I'm going to get better and everything. But then after about a month, you know how it can be. And so keeping the commitment is important. I got to thinking about, why is it I'm doing this exactly? Why? And it's because I need you. I need you. All right. If I just sat around and talked to myself, it wouldn't be the same as if people were watching. I need a live stream in order to turn on, in order to let my little light shine, to let that internal fire, that God-given spirit, and however you describe God, your powers of description are inadequate. All right, you cannot describe this inner spirit that we have. We are a sliver of the whole. We are made in God's image, and however you define that, but however you define it, it's inadequate. Okay, there is this inner spirit in us, and we have a vehicle, a physical vehicle, and we have this inner spirit, and in order to bring that to its highest level in me, I need you. All right, isn't that funny? The playing of this game of life works much better with people. If you were by yourself, you wind up like Tom Hanks in that movie Survivor. I think it was Survivor, where he's on that island, he's all by himself, and he needs the volleyball Wilson, to talk to. He needs a face to talk to. And just by virtue of the fact that I know that someone might be out there listening, it causes my vibration to go up, causes it to be higher, causes me to refine this inner fire that I have. But it goes out, and especially after a couple of days, 3, 4, 5 days of not doing it, what I notice, that inner fire goes down. Picture a campfire. I'm consumed with this idea of fire, all right? You got a campfire, you build it up, it burns nice and hot, and then, it appears to go out, all right? And it burns all the way down. The next morning you come out there and it looks like it's out. I mean, it could sit there for 2, 3, 4 days with gray ashes all over it, and you think it's gone. But all you have to do is kind of stir around in there a little bit, and put a little bit more fuel on it. Be deliberate about the management, and that's really what it is. It's the management of that fire, that inner fire down in that, seemingly dead campfire. You stir it around, you put a few twigs, it doesn't do anything at first, but then you see a little wisp of smoke, and you blow on it, give it some air, and the next thing you know, that thing's lit up again, all right? And that is the way we are, all right? And it, especially as you reach 60 years old and you've survived this long, but that campfire, especially if you earn some money, you build some comfort in your life, that campfire wants to lay on the couch and get gray. And there's a management thing here that and it really has to do with how much juice you want to squeeze out of life, doesn't it? How much of that inner fire, you've got the potential in you. It doesn't matter in what vehicle, you're carrying that fire around in. That fire is in you, and it's the same in everyone. It's just how to bring it out in your own unique, special way, bringing that inner fire, that lightning in a bottle, all right? And that's an interesting term, lightning in a bottle. It's like, you have this inner divine spirit that's contained, and bringing it out and getting some forward drive out of it. That's the trick, isn't it? You ever see that movie, The Christmas Story, with Ralphie? Ralphie, the kid that wants the Red Ryder BB gun, and he's got this funky family. It's a famous Christmas movie if you've never seen it, but Ralphie is this sort of meek, mild-mannered kid with glasses, and he wants this BB gun. But there's this bully that chases him around at school. He's real ugly and mean, and loves to watch him cry. And this kid pushes Ralphie to the breaking point, all right? And Ralphie, there's this moment, and the narration in that movie is first rate. That's part of the reason it's so funny, is because the narrator is, letting you know what's going on in Ralphie's mind. And I love this quote when Ralphie's getting beaten by this bully, and his mild-mannered exterior belies this inner fire that he's got, and he says, when he's getting beaten up and humiliated by this bully, the narrator says, "Deep in the recesses of my brain, a tiny red-hot little flame began to grow. Something had happened. A fuse blew, and I had gone out of my skull." I love that line. What is it that makes us just go out of our skull, out of our mind? What lights us up and brings out? And of course, right after that, and let me say it again, deep in the recesses of my brain, a tiny red-hot little flame began to grow. Something had happened. A fuse blew, and I had gone out of my skull. What is it that, whether you're Ralphie, and he jumps on that guy and beats him up, and everybody's freaked out that Ralphie's doing this. But what changed? What happened? What was the magic to turn Ralphie from a victim into a victor? What happened in him? And that is the essence of what I want to talk about today. What is it that will make us perform to our highest and best? What is it? Well, what is that internal combustion? And that's an interesting term, internal combustion. And so, that makes me think of the combustion engine, which is a good sort of metaphor. And think about when they first started making engines and how excited they were that they could contain fire inside of a compartment, and then they could pop, get that little engine to start running, and they could pour gasoline into this thing and burn it in little increments, and all of a sudden make wheels turn. And then, as time went by and they refined the science, they're tweaking it and tuning it and putting better fuel in it. And the next thing you know, you've got this engine. Now it's not popping on 1 or 2 cylinders, it's popping on 12, And instead of going pop, it's going boom, 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 And I want to see this movie Ford versus Ferrari with Matt Damon. I can't wait to see that film. But how exciting that must be, to create something that was never before, where you can take a fire and contain it and drive it in a direction you want, and tune it up to such a degree and that you can make a jet airplane, that flies at Mach 2. All right, something that's so tuned. So something that can manage fire, because that's all it is. It's managing fire, and so to refine something to such a degree, and I submit to you, I'm obsessed with this idea of how to take my own internal fire in this sports car that I've been loaned. Okay, it's getting kind of old. It hurts. It's work to pay attention to it. It goes up and down, this vehicle. All right, mentally and physically, I'm in a constant state of management, because you know what this vehicle wants to do? It wants to lay down on the couch and grow roots. Wants to drink wine. Wants to hang in lower elements, that are not as worthy of my presence and my attention. It wants to, engage in lower level conversations that are lesser than where I should be. There's constantly, gravity is a constant. It pulls you to the ground. If you don't physically get up and resist gravity, you're flat on the ground. All right, and it is the same with this notion of an internal fire. All right, this internal fire, this lightning in a bottle that's contained in this physical vehicle. You've just been loaned this vehicle. When I was a little kid, I was 6 years old. And it's one of the sort of the supernatural things I talk about in the Forbidden Discussions, which is out-of-body experiences. And if you've never had one, it's amazing. But when I was 6 years old, you can call it a dream if you want to, but to me, it's a clear memory, all right? And it's stuck with me while all other dreams fail. There's certain memories that I have that I know are not dreams. And one of those was I flew up out of my body, my physical body, and I flew up over the elementary school and flew around, and I could see the neighborhoods back behind. And I was in a transparent little light body, and I could see my physical body walking down the sidewalk. It connected in my mind, deep in my soul, that this physical body is just a temporary vehicle. All right, it's just a vehicle. My spirit is not connected. It's just temporarily contained in this physical body. And the spirit has access to all the power of the Creator of the universe. And so, but the exercise here is that you've been given this vehicle and you're to work with it, and that unlimited fire that's inside, that spirit fire, is inside this vehicle, and so you got a couple of choices. You can tune that vehicle, the mind and vehicle, and every day you're making choices that do that. You can tune it up to its highest peak performance, or you can just let it, coast along in neutral. And if you have, let's say you've got a 1969, GT500 Shelby Cobra parked in your garage. Okay, it's one of the hottest vehicles of the 60s. The Shelby Mustang Cobra was just the coolest thing one could have. I think it's one of the coolest things one can have today. One of those old cars. But if you got one in your garage, you got choices about how you want to drive that thing. And if you just leave it in there and you don't really do anything to it, and you might start it up once in a while and drive it to church on Sunday at 30 miles an hour. And but if you're not really interested in getting peak performance out of the potential of the fire that's contained inside that Shelby engine, all right? If you're not really interested in that, then you can let that car sit in the garage and grow dust, and let the gas get all sort of old and funky, and let the fluids and stuff settle and get solidified, and it'll probably start up and take you to church once in a while, all right? But if you actually want to get some performance out of that machine, if you want, you want to start that thing up and race, then you've got to maintain the machine. You've got to make sure that machine's getting good fuel. You got to clean it out once in a while. You got to blow out the pipes. It helps actually if you polish it, I think, because there's a certain kind of pride and joy that comes from a sharp, clean car. And it's just a lot of little things, a little tuning, right filters. And it's not so easy to pop our filters in and out, so it's best not to clog them up, and just a lot of little things, to get the peak performance out of the machine. And that's where I want to be. It's really where I want to be. And it's easy for me to say that that's where I want to be in this 60-year-old vehicle, that I actually want to get peak performance out of it. I want to get peak performance out of my mental capacity and stuff, which is the reason that I need to sit here in front of a camera and be examined, all right? Instead of sitting quietly in my private little world. That's why I do it, is because there's some fine tuning that's got to go on here. And and it's much, in some ways, at least for me, it's much better if I'm going to go work out a little bit, to go down to a gym where other, especially younger people, are working out, and they inspire me. And there's a certain kind of energy that happens down at a gym rather than in my backyard. By myself. And there's there's a reason we're here on this planet with a bunch of other people, and it's helpful to be around people. And anyway, there are many maintenance duties that one has to perform if they want to physically and mentally and spiritually be strong. And your faith, or your internal knowing, whatever it is, and however you connect with higher spirit, God as you know Him, that's very important. I think I've mentioned before, these people, the National Geographic magazine, they gave there was an article that came out some years ago. About centurions. They did a study on centurions, people who have lived to be over 100 years old, and their communities. They examined 3 communities of people that had a high population of folks that were over 100 years old, and they had several things in common. One of those things was some kind of a faith. And one of those things was that they had a community of people around them that they connected with every day. And they had some kind of hobby or craft or thing that they pursued every day. They didn't just give up on the pursuit of their art or their hobby or whatever it was they liked to do. And they got some physical exercise every day, even if it was just walking for 20 minutes. And their connection with the community, and certainly their diet too. They had, and I think fish played a prominent role in their diet. But anyway, some people say, well, I just got lucky or unlucky with the gene pool, and that may very well be. But it doesn't matter what kind of car you've been blessed with, right? You do the best you can to take care of it. And I'm talking to myself because I don't always do that. And but however the internal combustion inside your spirit, that internal fire is there. And how you go about your day and how you go about your thinking, and because really your thinking is everything. It's absolutely everything, because you cannot walk down the street without first you imagine yourself doing that. And so if you imagine yourself being great, the probability that you will be great is much higher than if you imagine yourself not being great. All right. And so what is it that you imagine? What visions are you feeding yourself? There's the internal combustion, can work two ways. You can turn it on or you can turn it off. All right. Your internal combustion, your lightning in a bottle, can be used or not used. And so what I mean by that is, are you influencing the world, or is the world influencing you? All right, and that's an interesting question, and I personally am susceptible to the influence of the world, as is most everybody, but it's like how high is my navigation? How is the navigation that guides this vehicle, the signal of my navigation, is that real high or is it low? Am I led like a sheep, or am I driven like a cat? It's much harder to herd cats than it is to herd sheep. Cats have this instinct about them. Some dogs are like that. Some dogs are easily led. And they'll do whatever you want. Other dogs, they're like, hey, I'm going this way. You can chain them in the backyard and they'll just constantly be pulling against that thing till they yank it up and jump over the back fence, And so what kind of a dog are you anyway? And my attempt here in talking to this camera is to try to raise my signal. And that's really what drives me. It drives me. To raise the vibration of myself, and I'm under the impression that if I can do that in myself in every way, if I can tune this machine to its highest and best, then there's a chance that might spin off to other people, that higher vibration might influence those other machines around me. I think I talked before about this notion of transference in your vibration. All right. And I learned this word when I worked in chemical plants years ago. And I only lasted for about 6 or 9 months because, working around chemical plants lowered my vibration terribly. I just hated the smell of the place. I mean, you've got to go any place where you've got to go through a safety training class just to go inside, is not really a place where I want to be. All right. And, but anyway, one of the things I learned in chemical plant was this notion of transference between the vibrations of big dynamic machinery, like a giant Ingersoll Rand compressor. You've got this, $100,000 machine or whatever it is, very expensive machine, giant gas compressor or something like that, big old thing, and it's got to go on this certain foundation that's, flexible and chemically resistant. And the reason is it cannot be concrete, which is a static material. It's got to be an epoxy foundation that it sits upon, which has a bit of an elastic quality to it. And why? Why does this big machine got to sit on that when it's operating? It's because that thing vibrates at a very, very high level, okay? And that thing has got to be tuned. That big old engine has got to be tuned just right. So it hums along at a certain kind of vibration, and they have ways of measuring this. We have this big old expensive machine in a room full of other big dynamic machinery that's sitting right next to it. All those machines have to be tuned perfectly, and they've got to operate at a certain vibrational level. Or otherwise, if one of them goes off kilter, all right, and it starts to, vibrate at an abnormal rate, you've got to go and fix that thing right away. And the reason is because even though all those other big old machines are operating correctly and vibrating correctly, you get one machine in there that's not vibrating right. And it transfers over time. The bad vibration of that one machine will transfer to the next machine and the next. And pretty soon all your machines are out of kilter, and it's going to cost you thousands of dollars to fix that, And so you've got to pay attention to the machine, and you've got to notice when it's a little off kilter, because that machine is going to, not function correctly, and B, it's going to cause a bad vibration to the others, and so my hope is to try to get this machine running right, and it doesn't now. I would love to be able to tell you that I'm firing on all cylinders here and everything's timed and tuned just the way it's supposed to be. It ain't. All right, but it's what I aspire to, and that's what I want, is to function at my highest and best before I die. And hey, wait a minute, how many minutes do I got left here? Tick tock, how long do I got to tune up this machine, after 60 years? How do I want to go out, all right? Because I'm going out pretty soon, all right? I don't know when exactly, but I figure when you hit 60 years old, hey, everything after that's pretty much gravy, right? I mean, I've already had a number of friends die, and I've known people that, my grandfather, for example, he dropped dead at 52 of a heart attack. I didn't even get to know him really. And so, this thing could wrap up rather quickly. My friend's mother died last week, and bless her heart, what a battle. But every time someone passes away, it reminds me that my time is limited here. My time is limited, and what do I, how much juice do I want to squeeze out of this life? What do I want? What do I hope for? And as time starts winding down, especially if you get some diagnosis where they say, hey, you just got X amount of time, all of a sudden you're like, wow, what do I want to do? I just got a little bit of time left. What do I want to do? And it's this whole notion of, I've been gifted with this incredible life here, and I've, I'm lucky enough to have the freedom to do a few things with it, have some choices, and how do I want to be? Do I want to make enough money where I can just, lay on the couch and watch the game and drink some booze, and, hang out on the weekend with people who are of a lower vibration? And I don't mean that disparagingly. People choose how they want to be, and Daddy used to say, hey, whatever makes you happy, and so I guess it really comes down to a decision of what does make you happy. What does make you happy? Does it make you happy operating at a level that is lower than your potential? Does that truly make you happy? Or do I hang in a lower orbit because I have a belief system that says, why bother? All right? Why bother, working hard, being uncomfortable, making life more difficult for a dream that will never come true? Why bother? And is there a mindset there that's constantly giving you excuses to say, I don't have to be my highest and best. I can coast along fairly comfortably and wait for the end right here. I'm reminded, it's just the way my mind works, folks. I roll out here because I love you. I'm going to tell you whatever comes into this idiot little Stevie mind, all right? And And I'm reminded of the Poseidon adventure. All right, the first one with it had Shelley Winters in it. And if you remember, if you're old enough to remember Shelley Winters and Ernest Borgnine and Gene Hackman, and it's one of Gene Hackman's breakout roles. But there's a scene, and I can't remember these actors' names. There's this young, pretty girl who was the singer, and this other guy, and I can't remember what that guy's name was, but he was an actor and he was in love with her. And now the ship has capsized, and there's a small group of people that are making their way through the destroyed ship, and they've got to make their way up to the hull. The ship is turned over, and they're trying to get up from the ballroom through the cabins to the engine room where they can get to the surface and hopefully get their way out of there. But there's this scene, and it just popped into my mind about life and death. And there's this, they get to this place where they're going to have to swim under the water and crawl along this rope and get to this other space. And everybody goes through, and Shelley Winters, is a swim champion, and she goes through, but there's this couple that's sitting there, and the girl, the singer, doesn't want to go in the water. She's afraid of the water. She can't swim, and the guy who likes her, he says, look, we've got to go through there, because if we stay here, we're not going to make it out. And she's like, no, I'm just going to stay here. I think it'll be all right here. I ain't going in that water. All right. And basically what she's saying to him is, I'd rather die than face my fear at the potential of life. I know life is out there. All right. I got to go through this dark, water to get to life. I know I do, but I don't want to. I don't want to go. All right. I don't want to take the chance of doing something dangerous. Hey, we're going to die anyway. All right. This is the mentality. We're going to die anyway. So why should I take a risk and try to get to a higher plane in life? And I'll just sit right here and I'll just wait it out. I'll wait it out. And there's these lower elements that are constantly talking to me that say, don't do it. Why bother? Why screw with that? I mean, I've had them just the last couple of days. How when you stop going to the gym for a couple of days, and these little voices start to talk to you, and they're like, you don't really have to go back there. I mean, you've already been away for a couple of days, and what the fuck, And I'm sorry, I'm not supposed to say that. Anyway, and so you're constantly battling gravity, negative elements, a lower orbit. All right, I'm constantly wrestling with this idea of hey, should I go to the gym, or should I lay in bed, or should I go to somewhere? And you might get the impression that I'm a go to the gym guy. I'm not really, but I've been trying. I've been trying. And as I see my body, falls apart, it wants to get slower. It wants to lay down. My body wants to lay down and die. All right, it does. It wants to lay on the couch and do nothing. And I've constantly got to talk to it. I'm reminded of General Patton, of World War II fame. And General Patton used to say, the body always wants to quit. It always wants to quit. The mind has to override the body. And it's true, And after you make the mind override the body, and it accomplishes a little something, the vibration gets higher, all right? The vibration goes up. And you've got to be very much, instead of a philosopher, you've got to be more like a mechanic, like a mental and physical mechanic of this vehicle. The mind is also like the body. It constantly needs attention and tweaking. And this whole, it goes back to my core that drives me is this notion that if you can balance the left and right brain, release the grip of this left brain logical a little bit, and let that right brain intuitive come higher, And it's a shy little child, a small, still voice. And if this left brain logical is constantly talking to it all the time, and you don't get this balance, you don't get access to that higher divine spirit that's within all of us. That's where it comes from, is in the stillness. And if you do that, a higher aspiration tends to want to take over. If you don't do that, lower elements are often in charge. And I don't pretend to know how it works. I'm not a psychiatrist or some expert. I'm just basically trying to give you my own experience, and in doing so, turning it over in my mind, making myself better in the process, hopefully. But this internal fire needs a manager, right? It needs a serious manager who's willing to constantly look at the performance of that machine every day, all day, making the choices that will make that mind and body work better, right? And to reach a peak performance type of a place. And it's the best I know. Let's see, there's a couple of quotes I had today that I forgot about, but here they are. And they have to do with the internal fire. And every day you wake up with an opportunity to renew, refresh, and reset. Today like's a perfect day for a do-over. Today's my do-over. I skipped class 2 days this week, and now I'm having to do over. Get into a better mindset. To talk into this thing every day. Now I'm 42 hours into this, and you've got to constantly draw from the inner well. Your own personal stories begin to get thin. Yeah, and I got quite a few personal stories, but you need to it really is an exercise of drawing on that internal library, that right brain intuitive, to get a subject and then spin off on it. It is that type of exercise. Refresh and renew. Constantly be in a state of change. I'll tell you another thing too. In everyone's life at some time or other, our inner fire goes out. It is then burst into flame by an encounter with another human being. We should all be thankful for those people who rekindle the inner spirit. You got any of those kind of people in your life? I got one or two, and I am so very thankful for them. We get tired. We get frustrated. We get to a point in the journey where, we just want to give up and forget about it. We know we're going to die anyway. And so what the hell? Why bother? It gets long and tiring. But there is this magic and beauty and majesty that's within everyone, and it's constantly blowing the ashes back on that campfire that's gone out. And the dynamic people we come into contact with, maybe the reason I talk into this camera is because I'm inspired by the people before me. The Zig Ziglar, who was my Sunday school teacher, and Tony Robbins, who I went to this seminar, and he had us walking on fire and jumping off telephone poles. And beautiful people who have come into my life, who cared for me and loved me, and spoke life into me. Yeah, the speaking of words, and I'll say it again, words are like magic spells, they are, and you should treat them that way. Your words, especially when you're speaking into the life of another human being, your words are like magic spells, and you should pretend like you're, making some kind of an incantation when you talk, especially into the life of a young person. What are your words doing to them? And they will. You take a young person, let's say a young football player in, junior high school, or even younger than that. Young children are so impressionable. And you tell them, you know what, you're no good at this. You're never going to be anything. You might as well give up. You're stupid. You're dumb. You're never going to make it. And if you speak those words into the life of a person, they act like magic spells, and that young person will all of a sudden start to grow into that. You can tell an old person this too, and if the internal fire is not strong enough to repel that negativity, then it will be absorbed, all right? And they will buy into that. Your words are like magic spells, and especially the young will grow into the words that you say to them. So if you're saying words that will drown out and throw cold water upon that internal combustion, that fire, they'll start to grow into someone who's lesser than they could be. But if you speak words of encouragement and motivation, and you stoke the fire that's in them, you blow the ashes off, and you tell them that they're great and they're going to be amazing, and they could be a part of the NBA or Major League Baseball or whatever, and they've got it, baby. They're smart, they're strong, they're capable, they're everything. And when you begin to speak those kind of magic words into the life of a person, they begin to grow into that, these vibrations. It's a vibrational transference, just like these machines. Our vibrations penetrate other people, and depending on how strong their own internal combustion is, those vibrations will affect them in different ways, and we have a vibrational transference, and so we have this. I love this term, lightning in a bottle. It's a containment of a powerful high energy, and we've got to use that with respect and gratitude every day of our lives, and it's not easy, folks. I've been through depression. I think I've talked at some length about that, and it's easy to settle into this depressed state where you think life is not going to change. You realize, most people that commit suicide, they do it because they're under the mistaken impression that life is not going to change, that it's always going to be the same. And I'm stuck here, and I'm never going to get out of it. And there are some situations in life where it may never change. You may have created situations that are never going to change, or you may have had such bad luck that situations have befallen you, and hey, my heart goes out to you. But I truly think, and it's what the Buddhist monks taught me when I lived up at the monastery for a year and a half. I don't know all about Buddhism, but one thing that penetrated into this thick skull from those wonderful monks that I lived with is to do your best and then be okay with what is. Those are two distinct things, by the way. Do your best every day is to do everything you possibly can to make the situation better, all right? And to be diligent about doing your best. And then the other thing they taught me was to be okay with what is, all right? Once you've done your best, and if you know in your heart that you're doing your best, then you be okay with whatever happens, and that's easier said than done, but it will bring you peace of mind. According to the Buddhists, we create a huge amount of our own suffering by wishing things were different, by not being okay with the current situation, the current relationship, the current job, the current bank account, all these things, the current state of your history and what you've done, and wishing that you hadn't done those things. That's a ridiculous way to spend your time, regretting what you've done, because guess what? There's nothing you can do about that. Not ever. The past is in fact gone, all right? And if you're constantly running movies in your mind about the past, it's not a good way to spend your time. You create a tremendous amount of suffering by wishing things had been different. And you cannot control the future, and how you haven't even been there yet, okay? And so you spend time creating suffering, worrying about stuff that is not even here yet. And so doing your best and being okay with what is. And if you can practice this art, and settle into a mindset of being okay after you've done your best, it gives you actually more energy, more time, more focus to stay in the present moment, and to do your best with every minute you've got, and whatever you aspire, whatever your vision is. You get to work on that and take a few steps closer to that in the midst of your day-to-day, trying to survive and maintain yourself. And it's easier said than done. Simple, but not easy, right? Simple, but not easy. To do your best to be okay with what is. It causes a calmness, a stillness. It causes, Eckhart Tolle talks a lot about this in his book, The Power of Now. That's a great book. I love that book, Power of Now. And he talks about, I have a kinship with Eckhart Tolle, and I think that's part of the reason a lot of people do, is because his story is very interesting. Eckhart Tolle was, I think he was about 27 or something. And, he became disillusioned with the way the world was working, and this, he didn't know what career. He comes from this real strict European background, and you're supposed to get into a career and have a purpose. And by the time you're 27 years old, you should be on this strong career path, making lots of money, and, that's the way you do. And he really wasn't. And that's the way I kind of got in my 50s, and so what did he do? He became sort of what some might call depressed. I call it going into the cocoon. And when the caterpillar goes into the cocoon, you could term that a depressed state, all right? But really, there's stuff going on in there. That's an interesting thing. Not to get way off of Eckhart Tolle, but a caterpillar goes into a cocoon, and it doesn't just sort of sprout some wings. It actually turns into a goo, a complete goo, and then is reformed into a butterfly. Now, how in the world that happens, I don't know, but I believe it happens to human beings. And I believe it happened to me, and I believe it happened to Eckhart Tolle. And basically, for 2 years, he said he'd sit around on the park bench and do nothing. People thought he was crazy. And he started becoming very still and sinking deeper and deeper into a meditative state. And he started coming up with all this stuff that's now, internationally famous. And he emerged from that cocoon to bring about what he internally, intuitively knew was his role in life. But it took him some time. And what happens to people, I think certainly what's happened to me is they get to a point and they've gathered enough knowledge and experience that they turn from just being a student of the world and begin to, their intuition, their right brain intuitive begins to spill out, and and it's what Albert Einstein this guy Jake Barnett gave a great TED talk about Albert Einstein. And Jake Barnett, I've mentioned him before. He's this autistic kid who at 8 years old was fascinated with calculus and became this math genius. And he didn't even talk till he was 5, and just intuitively he knows. He came here with mathematics in him. He's a savant. Anyway, he talks about Albert Einstein, and the cocoon stage for Albert Einstein was very young. he went through school, and then he couldn't raise the money to go, I guess, into a master's or doctorate program, and so he had to take a job as a lowly patent clerk and sit around in an office for, I think, a year and a half, something like that. And it was then that Albert, he had come up with nothing original before that, apparently, but it was when he sat around and had the time and space just to think on his own, and rest his mind from, consuming what people were teaching him, and to intuitively come up with original thought. And it was during this boring time as the patent clerk that Albert wrote the 5 papers that changed the world. And I submit to you that he found his internal fire without the interference of outside vibration. He found the inner knowledge. He accessed that higher realm, and that is possible for anyone. But I think it is a talent that has to be, you have to be aware that it's there. All right, you have to be aware that there is something much stronger, much more powerfully intelligent than your left brain logical can calculate. This notion of God, friends, God, the universe, prana, chi, whatever you want to call it, it's beyond your power of description. All right, you can put a label on it, you can put an organization around it, you can say it's this or that, but the fact of the matter is that God is not describable, all right, in English or any other earthly language, all right? And I submit to you, it's actually a vibrational frequency language of some sort. But your power of description of this phenomena is inadequate, all right? And you cannot describe what this is. All you can do is feel your way into it. And that's why people get inspired in church. They feel it. That's why they go to church. That's why church is popular, because it draws them in. It's not to disparage any religious tradition. By no means would I ever want to do that. I've been tremendously inspired by the Baptist Church in my 20 plus years there, and as a missionary in Peru. But what I've come to learn, they've taught me, a lot, but I began to feel on my own this connection with God, and it's not something that I can put into a box or be contained, and so it is within everyone, and if you are in possession of what I call godly qualities, which are basically loving qualities, and I'm a avid fan and student of Jesus Christ, and I aspire to carry out those basic messages that he taught us. Love thy neighbor as thyself, and share the love of Christ, and have a loving spirit, to have compassion for people who are having trouble, and to care about something outside of oneself, to give physical care, to pour out oneself selfishly, and in a small way, this is what I hope to do here. If you think I'm crazy, or you don't agree with whatever I say, I got to be okay with that, because the heart is there. I want to help with whatever knowledge I've gathered on this planet before I'm dirt. And I want it to be original, and I'm going to say it again and again because I'm just such a fan of this quote. It's this that Johnny Cash movie, Walk the Line. He wants to sing these songs that are. He's got an interview with Sam Phillips, and he's trying to sing these gospel songs, and Sam's like, no, that kind of music don't sell, and he goes. You didn't, Johnny Cash says to Sam Phillips, you didn't let us bring it home. And he says, bring it home? Okay, let's bring it home. He says, If you was hit by a truck and you was laying out there in that gutter dying, and you had a chance to sing one song, one song that people would want to hear before you're dirt, and one song that would let God know how you felt about your time here on earth, one song that would sum you up, you telling me that's the song you would sing? That same old Jimmy Davis tune we hear on the radio every day about your peace within and how it's real and how you're going to shout it? Or would you sing something different, something real, something you felt? Because I'm telling you right now, that's the kind of song that people want to hear. That's the kind of song that truly saves people. It's not about believing in God, Mr. Cash. It's about believing in yourself. And that statement right there, I love that statement. I'm going to say it again and again because I love it. What is your internal fire? What comes from you authentically? What is the song that you sing, your song? No one can sing your song. No one can dance your dance. No one can tell your story but you, all right? And the more I believe that people are willing to step out and say what's authentically on their heart, to allow the free flow of information, the better this world is going to be, and the more that we're going to heal, and the less we're going to move towards destruction, and more we're going to move towards a harmonic, and it's what I call that second coming of Christ. It's that the coming of a collective Christ consciousness that will when we raise our own vibration, we transfer that vibration to others, and the higher we can make ours, the better for the people around us, because we're sharing love and encouragement and speaking those magic words that lift them up. And the more that we can do that, the more that there will be a collective rising of the vibration, and a harmony will be reached at some point. And that's what brings down the walls of Jericho, friends. All right, and that vibrational quality in everybody. And so I encourage you to tune your fucking vehicle. I shouldn't say, I'm so sorry. But tune your vehicle, tune yourself. Identify those things that are lesser. Identify those things that are not you, that are not contributing to your raising of your higher vibration. Spend time in the quiet, and your higher self is going to identify them for you. And you know that you know. You know that you know. Drinking that stuff at night, or smoking that stuff, or eating that food, overeating, creating a lower vibration. If you're overeating or you're eating garbage, it creates a lower vibration in you. You don't require that much food to live, okay? You don't. I'm talking to myself here. I mean, hey, I'm looking fatter now than I have in quite a long time, all right? And so I have to look in the mirror, all right? But identify these things, constantly be in a state of management, and don't give up, all right? Don't give up, because it builds on itself, and every little positive thing you do, every little choice you make, whether it's a negative thought that you reject, or whether it's a lesser habit that you decide not to do today, or whatever it may be, talking with those people that bring you a little bit down, and they do, but you still hang with them, whatever it may be, you know what it is. And I encourage you to make the better choices. I'm talking to myself here, and part of the reason I want you is because you're a mirror to me, and I appreciate your comments. I love you so much. And here's one more quote here somewhere. Oh, this is the same quote as before, but I'll say it again. In everyone's life, at some time, our inner fire goes out. It is then burst into flame by an encounter with another human being. We should all be thankful for those people who rekindle the inner spirit. I am thankful thankful to the people who have spoken into my life, helped raise my little vibration. Keep the fire burning. You got a campfire to manage every day, all right? And if you don't manage that campfire, folks, that inner spirit, that inner glow, that lightning in a bottle, if you're not managing that all the time, where it's tuned to its highest and best, where that engine's just vroom, vroom, then it's going to be sitting in the garage collecting dust. And manage that campfire, manage that machine, and keep the vibration high. I love you, and I'll talk to you tomorrow at 6 o'clock. Have a great day, and keep that vibration high, baby. I love you, and adios, amigos.